Students, you are most welcome to this second lesson of soil. In the first lesson, we had Mr. Ejo and I discussing a lot of things about soil, and in that lesson, we realized that soil is very important to our lives. Now, in this particular lesson, we are going to look at soil profile, and we are going to be looking at a lot of things in this soil. Now, soil profile. This is the vertical arrangement of the different soil layers called the horizons from the top to the bottom layers. Soil profile, it represents the different layers of soil at various stages of soil development. Like Mr. John I said in the first lesson, for soil to be formed, it takes a very long period of time. Now, soil which has distinguished soil layers, that soil is considered to be mature, whereas that one which is not having distinguished soil layers, it is considered to be immature or young. Now, soil profile consists of the following. We have topsoil, that one is the very first one from the top. We have subsoil, we have parent rock, which is at times called the underlying rock. Now we have a diagram showing the different layers of the soil. Now when you look at that diagram, on top of this diagram we have litter. This one is the same as the decaying matter, the humus. We have, after the humus, we have, now humus is a very thin layer which is found on top of the soil. Now below that humus or litter, we have topsoil, followed by subsoil. We have the weathered and the unweathered parent rock. Now when you look at that diagram critically, you realize that the weathered parent rock, the rock particles, actually the rock has been broken into relatively small particles. Then the unweathered parent rock, we see that we have unbroken down rock. Then when we move to the next slide, we see that we have a YouTube video which we can watch, and this one gives more information about the soil profile, the different layers of the soil. We can take some time and we watch this video as we summarize what we are talking about.
What is soil profile? A vertical section cutting through the soil showing the different layers of the soil is called a soil profile. Soil profile can be seen by looking at the sides of a recently dug trench or while digging a well or a foundation of a building. Soil has three different layers: topsoil, subsoil, and substratum. Topsoil. It is the most useful part of the soil. It is dark in color because it is rich in minerals and humus. Plant roots also grow in the topsoil. Many living things like insects, worms, bacteria, and rodents live in the topsoil. It contains the decayed remains of dead plants and animals, which forms humus. Humus makes the topsoil very fertile. Subsoil. The layer of soil just below the topsoil is called subsoil. It is lighter in color and has little humus. It is made up of slightly bigger rock particles, which makes it harder and more compact. It contains very little living organisms. Substratum. The layer of soil just below the subsoil is called the substratum. It mainly consists of partially broken or weathered rocks. These soil breaking from the bedrock, which is just below the substratum. It is this bedrock that has produced soil over a long period of time. There are some important climatic factors which affect the soil profile and bring changes in the soil.
Now, when you look at that video, it has been talking about the different soil layers, like you had. Now, I'm just going to continue from where I stopped. Now, we are going to components of soil. There are basically 6 components of soil, and these include, we have the inorganic particles, we have humus, water, air, mineral salts, and soil living organisms. We are going to begin by talking about the inorganic particles. Now, I'm going to give you some facts about these inorganic particles of soil. These are produced during the process of weathering. In the first lesson, you talked about the different types of weathering, and you saw how soil is formed by weathering. Now, soil particles vary in size, and their sizes are used to classify them, as we see on our right side of the slide. The different soil particles are clay, silt, fine sand, coarse sand, and gravel. Now, when we look at this table, on the left side we are having the soil particle, and the first soil particle is the gravel. When you look at the gravel, it is having a diameter of 2 millimeters. Then we have coarse sand, which has a range of 0.2 to 2.0, followed by fine sand, which has a range of 0.02 to 0.2. We have silt, which is ranging from 0.002 to 0.02. Then lastly, we have clay, which has less than 0.002. Now we move to the next slide. What are some of the uses of these soil particles? Now, you will realize that when you look at the different soil particles, the clay, the silt, and the rest, we realize that they are very important to some of the organisms which live in and on soil. So the first use of the soil particles, they provide a surface for anchoring plant roots. Anchoring means giving support. Now, these soil particles, they provide support to the plants. Actually, when a plant is growing, that's where the roots are going to gain support. The second one is about giving liquid framework to the soil itself. You know, this soil, do you realize that the soil is having a liquid framework? That's why we are in a position to work on it. The soil particles also provide mineral elements to the soil, which are absorbed by the plants using the plant roots. When you look at the plant roots, these plant roots, like we discussed in flowering plants, they have very many uses to the plants. Apart from giving the plants support, they also enable these plants to absorb these soil nutrients. Now we are moving to experiments about soil. Now this first one is going to be about showing the different soil particles or texture. And in this experiment we require some materials. The first material is the measuring cylinder. Now the use of this measuring cylinder is for taking measurements. And in this case we are going to measure the soil sample. Then we have topsoil. This one is going to be our sample. We have the stirrer. This one is for mixing. We have the beaker. I think this one is for collecting water. Now, in the procedure, we shall put water in the measuring cylinder halfway. We know a measuring cylinder has different capacity. We have some measuring cylinders which go up to around 100 milliliters. Others, they are for 50. We have some for 25, 10. But in this case, we are going to use measuring cylinders of 100 milliliters. Now, after putting water in a measuring cylinder halfway, so out of the 100, we are going to fill that measuring cylinder up to a half, and that is around 50 cubic centimeters. We shall pour 20 cubic centimeters of soil in the water, and we shall stir thoroughly. We shall leave this experiment to stand for about 3 minutes and observe. Now, what do you think is the use of this stirring? Stirring is majorly to ensure that the soil layers can mix thoroughly well. Now, when this experiment is left to stand for some minutes, we are going to observe the following. When the soil particles settle down, the particles arrange themselves according to their particle sizes, where the heaviest particle will settle at the bottom, and the small and the lightest at the top, as shown on the diagram which is right on our right. Now, in conclusion, we realize that soil is made up of different particles which have different sizes and densities. Now, we move to the next component of soil, and that is soil air. Do you realize that in soil we have air between the soil particles? In soil we have air spaces, and these air spaces are important for growth of plant roots and the health of soil organisms, because it is in these air spaces that's where we get our soil air existing. It is mainly oxygen and nitrogen. Carbon dioxide is usually in solution form as carbonic acid. Like you saw in the first lesson, we realized that carbon dioxide in the atmosphere dissolves in the water to form a weak acid, and that weak acid is the carbonic acid. The depth to which the roots can grow depends on how deep the air can penetrate through the soil. So it is very hard for us to get plant roots in the bottom layers of the soil. Plant roots are commonly found in the top layers of the soil just because of the air which is present in large quantities in that top layer of the soil. Now let's look at the importance of soil air. It provides oxygen for respiration of soil organisms and plant roots. Now, of course, these organisms that live in soil, they need oxygen for them to carry out respiration. In respiration, these organisms are going to be in position to produce energy that can facilitate very many processes in their bodies. Oxygen is also needed for the decay that produces humus. We know very many organisms die when plants shed off their leaves. All these are going to decay and decompose. Now, the process of decomposition requires oxygen. And of course, you know the importance of this humus. It provides a lot of nutrients to the soil, which are very important to plant growth. The third importance of soil air is about providing nitrogen for fixation by the nitrogen-fixing bacteria which are found in the soil. The nitrogen, as we are going to discuss the nitrogen cycle, the nitrogen that is absorbed from the atmosphere, of course this nitrogen, as we shall see from the nitrogen cycle, is not used directly in the soil. This nitrogen is first converted, as we are going to see. So the nitrogen is absorbed and is needed in the formation of nitrates and proteins. When you look at plants, there are some plants which provide proteins in our diet. For example, we have the beans. So we shall see how the nitrogen is going to come into this. Carbon dioxide, the next one is about carbon dioxide in the air, increases soil acidity, which favors plant growth of which favors proper growth of some plants. We know that carbon dioxide, when once dissolves in water, it forms carbonic acid. Now, this carbonic acid is responsible for providing acidic conditions to the soil. There are some plants which can only do well in acidic soils, as we are going to see as we continue with our lesson. So that is one of the uses of this soil air. Then we also have the same carbon dioxide which is present in the air dissolves in water to form carbonic acid, and this will facilitate the process of weathering, as you discussed in the first lesson. Now we are going to move to the next experiment. This one is about determining the percentage of air in the soil. So in this experiment we have the requirements. So we shall need 2 measuring cylinders, and we are going to also need dry soil sample, water, and a glass rod. Now when you look at the measuring cylinders, these ones are going to be used for measuring, taking the measurements of the soil samples and water. Then the glass rod is going for steering. Now we go to the procedure whereby we are going to measure about 50 cubic centimeters of dry soil sample in a measuring cylinder, and we are going to tap on top of this cylinder to make sure that the soil can level. This one is important in a way that it can enable us to get the right measurements. Then procedure number 2, in this case we shall measure 50 cubic centimeters of water, but in another measuring cylinder. Now what we realize in this experiment, we are measuring the same quantities of water and the soil sample. Now after taking those measurements, we are going to add the two together. We shall get the water and we pour it into the measuring cylinder which is containing the soil. Now after that, we shall allow the mixture to stand, but still, before allowing it to stand, we shall need to stir to allow that to make sure that the soil is thoroughly well mixed with the water. Then of course after that we shall allow our mixture to stand until no more bubbles appears. Then of course after the experiment, we shall read and record our final level of water plus the soil in the measuring cylinder. Then from there we shall carry out the calculations and determine how much air is in this particular soil sample. So these are some of our results. So from these results we realize that the volume of soil was 50 cubic centimeters. I think that's what we measured. Then the volume of water is 50 cubic centimeters. I think that's what we measured. But we realized after mixing these two, the water and the soil, and after stirring, the volume of the mixture now reduced, because the expected volume was around 100 cubic centimeters. But we realized that after mixing, the volume of the mixture is 85 cubic centimeters. So what does it mean? It means that some part of the soil was taken up by the water. And which part is this? It is the air. So the air which escaped out of the soil, that part which was occupied by the air, it has been taken up by the water. So we realize that because the expected volume was supposed to be 100 cubic centimeters, but now the final volume of water and soil after mixing, we are seeing that is 85. Now the volume of air in the soil, in that case we shall get what we are supposed to get, 100 minus 85, that one gives us 15 cubic centimeters. Then from this we can now calculate the volume of the volume of air in that particular soil sample. And basically, the way you can calculate this, you get the volume of air in the soil, that is 15, divided by the volume of the soil, I think that is 50, multiply it by 100 cubic centimeters, sorry, 100%, and that one gives us the percentage of air in the soil. Thank you for listening. We shall meet again in the next lesson.